So, hi
Okay.
everyone. We are very happy to have Phillip Blondeel. Phillip Blondeel is professor and chairman of the Department of Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery at the University Hospital of Ghent, Belgium, and he is also attending plastic surgeon in Montreux, Switzerland. He's a friend of us, Dr. Blondeel. The idea is to reach our friends around the world to understand how they are managing the pandemic. So we would love to hear from you how the pandemic impact your professional life and your personal life. Please, Dr. Phillip, we would love to hear from you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having me here in this short, brief video. Well, let me first position ourselves here on the map. So we are in Ghent, Belgium. Belgium is a very small country, as you know, in Western Europe. And it's very important to understand where we are, because that's a big part of actually the crisis that has hit us. We are a small country. It has only 11 million people. So we only the entire country is a half of the size of São Paulo. That's how small our country is. But the thing is that also in surface we're very small, and so that means that a lot of people are living close to each other. Just to give you a comparison, in Sweden has the same amount of people, about 11 million people that live there, but they have a country that is enormous. I don't know how big it is exactly, but it's an enormous country. And you'll see that the numbers actually in Sweden, the infection rate, but also the death toll is way much lower than it is here in Belgium. And you'll typically see, and I think you'll probably see that in Brazil too, is that in areas where there's densely populated, the crisis hits so much harder than in the countryside. Just look at the United States, for example, New York. You know, the big cities are hit way much harder than they are in the rural areas. And that's so that's the truth for Belgium. We have been. I was actually in Switzerland in my practice in mid-March, and I remember it was March 13 when the Swiss government decided to shut down all public events, the ski resorts, hotels, restaurants, bars, and so on. In Belgium, it was a few days later. But it all went a little bit the same way. All of a sudden, we were confronted with a lockdown. I was very fortunate to travel back to Belgium before the borders closed. So I've lived in Belgium throughout the entire crisis. And for me, from a personal point of view, I have lived this crisis in two ways. I must say that my father-in-law has been very severely infected and has been intubated for more than 5 weeks, and has been in intensive care for 7 weeks. He's out of there now. He's doing much better now. But so our family has directly been affected by this virus, and I see it in two periods: the period before my father-in-law got infected, and the one after. The one before, I remember I was thinking like, hey, how hard can this be? You know, how serious can this be? You know, and I was talking like, oh, it's like a virus, like a flu, and you know, but you know what? It's not true. And so there was a part that was maybe not serious enough about it. And what I know now is that when I look at some people, I really think that some people really don't take this serious. This is not a virus. This is not a common bacteria. This is something we've never seen before. And obviously, if you're personally involved, you start reading and you look at science and so on, and you see that this is actually an organ or an organism that behaves way much more aggressive than a virus will do or any type of bacteria does. And if I look at all the side effects that it creates and the effect that it creates on economy and on our healthcare system, you know, it's clearly something that we've never seen before. In the period after my father-in-law was affected, it was a period where I started living it more, the whole thing more vividly. We were then closing also down the ORs. In the beginning, we went down to an occupation of about 50%, and with the request only to operate cases that were urgent, like oncological cases. Then after 3 weeks, we went through a period of about 2 weeks where virtually nothing was possible anymore. Only very severe oncological cases, which I mean life-threatening cancers, not things like basocellular carcinoma on the skin, or you know, some common oncological cases were not allowed. Just the very aggressive, you know, melanoma types things, breast cancers, and so on. Anything that could be postponed needed to be postponed. And then gradually, you know, we started doing a little bit more and more. And, you know, I don't know how it went in Brazil, but a very remarkable side effect was that in the ERs, we didn't see any traditional morbidity anymore. We didn't see any traditional pathology anymore, like diabetic shock, cardiac arrests, cardiac infarction, cerebral accidents, you know, all these things. All of a sudden, it was as if these things didn't exist anymore. You didn't see any trauma anymore. This was easy to be explained, obviously, because people were not going out anymore. Less traffic accidents, those kind of things. So it was a very strange, bizarre period where there was virtually no activity. They always said that, you know, hospitals were going to be very busy. What actually happened in reality is that the majority of the staff of our hospital had nothing to do, just because the other half was occupied only with intensive care, but you know, they had more than sufficient staff to take care of the patients. And also there's never been an issue of intensive care beds or respirating machines. We did see a lack of masks, obviously, and gowns and gloves. And in the second period also medication, especially things like propofol, for example. So medication typically used, also intensive care. But it was never dramatic. In the entire Belgium or in Switzerland, we never had dramatic issues of, you know, people or patients where they had to decide if they were going to continue respirating or not. You know, we never had to make those difficult ethical choices, and I think that was good. I think we came well prepared. Obviously, we have a very good but also extremely expensive healthcare system. So everybody who could be saved, I think, has been saved. Still, we're facing about 8,000 cases of people who died, but these are mainly elderly people, as most of the parts of the world. But we didn't ever see those dramatic situations like they did in New York and so on. And I'm really grateful for that. And obviously I'm living this now in a more careful way, where we're working together with the task force of our hospital and the government to really get things on track again. What we see now, actually, in this week is they start loosening the measures. We are back to 80% of our activities since last Monday. We've seen that, you know, some parts of schools are reopening. The shops are slowly reopening again. And what you see now typically is that we're looking back, and especially economy is looking back, and a lot of business and manufacturers are looking back and looking like, you know, was this really necessary to do all of this? Was this really necessary to paralyze the entire economy of a country? Enormous losses. A lot of people are without a job. Many companies, mainly in the restaurant business, are bankrupt. There's a lot of industrial, but also personalized and family drama. So yeah, you know, it had a major impact, and I don't know what's going to happen in the second wave, but I think they're going to do it different in the second wave if it comes.
Dr. Phillip, before Eduardo Montaghi is with us. Eduardo Montaghi is with the Department Scientific of the São Paulo Society of Plastic Surgery. Sorry. How did you manage the immigrants and the poor people? Because in Brazil, one of our problems is the poor people, but we have a global health system here. How do you manage this time, those people?
Well, you know that we are. There's been a long history of immigration now, the last 4 or 5 years, as a consequence of the Syrian war. We've seen a lot of Arab immigrants, but also a lot of North African, and actually also African immigrants. And you know, we need to distinguish between political refugees and economical refugees, obviously. But what actually happened is that this inflow of immigrants has obviously stopped because all the governmental departments stopped functioning as well. So you know, there was nowhere where you could request your immigration. You know, there were no forms to be filled in because there were no people who were dealing with the papers. So that there was no new influx of immigrants, but and actually all the immigrants that actually are in the country, we have a systematic approach that we take care of them. So even if they're, you know, contributing to society or not, by law, all these people are protected and they get governmental care. Yeah.
Okay, so
Hey, Eduardo.
hi, how's it going? Tell us a little bit about, because we all know you're like a rock star in plastic surgery, especially in breast surgery. And so tell us a little bit about your childhood and how did you end up there in being who you are?
Okay, Eduardo. So I was actually born in the United States and lived there until I was 6 years old. We moved back to Europe and did my, you know, I went to regular school and then high school in Belgium. My first choice in life was actually when I was 18 years old, when I was trying to decide what I was going to do. And my first thoughts was, you know, I like to do construction and electronics and stuff. I wanted to be an industrial engineer. But finally, my father was a physician. He was an internal medicine specialist. And, you know, I thought, like, you know, why not give it a go? You know, maybe I'll like it. And so I went into medicine. And by the time that I reached the end of my medical school, you had to choose a specialty, obviously. And as I like, you know, working with my hands, I thought, like, you know, why don't I do something in surgery? Because, you know, that's what I like to do. So I went into surgery, general surgery first. And then I did a rotational plastic surgery. I think like most of us probably got into plastic surgery and we liked it. And I applied and I got in. And I started my plastic surgery training. So I did 3 years of general and three years of plastics. And when I was in my 5th year of plastics, I did 1 year in Frankfurt in Germany. And I was there with Professor Lemperle and Klaus Exner. And he had a main influence on me because we were doing tram flaps in those days, free tram flaps. And we were always saying, we got to do this without a muscle. And then I went to New Orleans to a meeting and I met Bob Allen, who had done his first cases on deep flaps. And, you know, we felt like, hey, this is the way to go. And so in the end of December 93, when I was in my last year of residency, I did my first deep flap. My chief, Willy Boeks, in those days, felt that he could trust me and gave me the opportunity to do that, and it worked out. And actually, since then, I've never done a tram flap anymore. And from that point on, we started developing it, and I did my PhD thesis on it because I felt there was a lot of science that had to be done to convince others that this was the right way to go. So we did a lot of basic science on kinetics and force and power and muscle movement and stuff. And then slowly we got more and more followers in the beginning here in Ghent, and then in other parts in Belgium, but also internationally. In the beginning, we had a lot of criticism. A lot of people felt that this was something stupid, that this was something exceptional, that only a few surgeons in the world could do, and that this was not for the common regular plastic surgeon, and so on and so on. So, and after I'd done my PhD, we started writing the book, the famous book on perforated flaps. And that also changed a lot. It gave much more fundamentals, much more better insight for many other people to understand actually what perforated flaps were. And and then we started applying perforated flaps for other types of reconstruction, not only for breast and head and neck and limbs, and and slowly it became the standard in plastic surgery, and that's where we are right now.
So, to the best of my knowledge, you were the face of the perforator movement for a little while, because it all started in Ghent. Of course, we had Koshima, and we had Bob Allen, and we had Axel Feller. But the first course you organized in Ghent, and then it all began there. So I was finishing my training program, so I went visiting you, and so could you tell us the importance of the movement? And you were of all of these guys, you're the one that speaks English the best, apart from Bob Allen. So the importance of traveling and to it was a revolution back then in the year 2000. So the importance of that.
Well, yeah, definitely, it was a revolution. I think that's the right word to use, because there were a lot of people with conservative thoughts, and they said, "Oh, I've always done it this way. It works well in my hands. Why should we change? And this is risky." And the reason, actually, the way the first meeting actually came into life was actually by accident. I visited Bob Allen, and just like my PhD thesis, my philosophy was always, we need to find a way to make this more formal, to get science to communicate and so on, and because otherwise we're not going to get there. And it was already, also with writing the book, it was a long time that I wanted to write a book about this. And but when I was sitting with Bob, I said, "Listen, we got to organize a meeting about this." And Bob said, "Well, I don't, we've just done a microsurgical meeting last year, and I don't feel like doing it anymore." And I said, "Okay, I'll do it in Ghent, no problem." And that's how the first meeting actually came to Ghent. But very quickly, we saw actually that there was many more people interested than we thought in the beginning. And so there were two things. First, getting these scientific fundamentals for this type of surgery was essential to build on. And second was communication, the type of communication that we were handling. Those were the days that, even PowerPoint presentations did not exist. Computers, was not hardly there. There was no cell phone, so it's not like now, you give a presentation and, 3 seconds later, the entire world knows through Instagram what you've been doing. Here, it was really important to organize meetings in different countries. And the philosophy that we have applied, that was to have the perforated course meeting, the international perforated course meeting, in a different continent every year. Not a different country, but a different continent. So, and as you know, we've taken to Sao Paulo, we've been to Hong Kong, we've been throughout the entire world. And in that way, you avoid repeating yourself, and you still can you can reach sufficient people throughout the world that maybe do not have the opportunity to travel to other places. And it's been a big success. I was always saying, after 6 years, after 6 editions, everything is set and we should stop doing this. But my friends and colleagues always said, no, let's keep going. And it's still going strong. There's a very high attendance still, and still people interested in new evolutions, new flaps, new techniques, new things to be developed. And it's very interesting to see how even today, 25 years later, 27 years later, still this field is expanding.
We'd like to know, coming back to the pandemic time, we wonder, how do you manage your kids? Are they learning with this tough time? And we also would like you to tell us how future will look like for you, how this will change things forever. But we would like to know also how you manage your personal life during this couple weeks.
Well, like I said, it's been personally, it's been really difficult, obviously, with my family that's been in distress. So I've lived that very intensely. As a chief of our department, obviously, you are involved with the management of the hospital. For example, we took over a part of the emergency floor. All soft tissue trauma actually came directly to our department, and didn't even pass through emergency anymore. So we've all been trying with all different departments help out the crisis. So there has been some work for me. There's been a lot of coordination. I didn't really have any time off, but many people in my staff actually had a chance to take it easy. Some needed that rest. Others have taken that time to do scientific work, to catch up with studying or scientific writing and stuff. So I think we're going to have a very fruitful period after this. At home, it's been, my wife is a plastic surgeon as well. She has a private clinic that we had to close completely, which had obviously a financial impact. And then also my daughter was not able to go to school anymore. And that had an impact because we had to stay at home and teach her actually things. You from one day to the other, you become a teacher. And which is fun in the beginning, but after a while can get somehow irritating. So, but it's sort of, I definitely think that new things going to be coming out of this. Like just now today, I was visiting a virtual visiting professor at the Bunkie Clinic, and there were over 200 participants, and I think this is the new way of teaching. I think it's always been fun to travel, but I don't think we're going to be traveling as much as we did before. I also think that privately we might rethink a couple of things. Also school probably will become different, where maybe we'll move to part-time teaching at school and the other part at home. I don't know. We're all working with these platforms now. These platforms, all of a sudden, you hear of platforms you've never heard before. Some are really great. It's amazing how you can organize meetings up to 500 people without a problem, without a glitch in the image. It's just absolutely amazing. So yeah, definitely. And I think it has a great impact also on ecology. There are hardly any traffic jams. You see nature is flourishing. There are all types of birds that are back into the country here that we haven't seen for years. It's amazing, how positive it is towards nature. And I think, we've had all these protests on ecology just before the crisis. And it's like a little bit God had this, like magical puzzle put together and say like, okay, guys, you don't want to listen on ecology? All right, I'm going to teach you a lesson and you're going to understand. And you know what? I really believe that this will have an impact on how we are going to deal with our nature in the future. So it has a very wide impact, I think.
Okay. Well, we have a little less than 5 minutes, so I'm going to cut it short. So you've worked under two bosses during your entire life, and now you're taking over. So one is how to take their examples and to inspire your commandees now, and then if you can end with a message to the young plastic surgeon living now in the world and in Brazil, a message to them.
Well, I inspire my staff by each of them given their own responsibility. I call it little shops. You know, our department, recently took over the head and neck surgeons, and the maxillofacial surgery is also now within our department. So now we can offer a full multidisciplinary approach of facial trauma, facial oncology, and so on. And it's by creating these little departments, these little shops, little responsibilities, and giving it to them that you motivate people. Also, you have to find financial structures, obviously, to motivate people. But, you know, it really works. And a good atmosphere, positive atmosphere, opportunities to grow, opportunities to do research, to teach, to travel. These are really important things, and you know, we've now grown to 11 full-time faculty members, which is the biggest department in Belgium and probably one of the biggest ones in Europe as well. And it has been a very positive story. I think the only problem that we have is our growing pains. You know, it just goes all a little too fast. So finally, a message for the juniors. You know what? I just have one message for you. Is just, you know, follow your dreams. That's what I've done. I felt that this was the right way to go, and I got inspired by others. And I think you need to travel a little bit, look and listen, and then just follow your heart and do what you think is right.
Okay, thank you very much. It was incredible, nice to be with you. The time ran very fast. Thank you very much to share your thoughts, to share your time with us. Hope you and your family be safe, and see you probably next year.